Hey guys, it's Josh, and welcome back to the Not So Bad Bachelor Pad, your favorite podcast for learning how to balance between being a functional adult and a raging dumpster fire. And let's be honest, some days we're all a bit of a dumpster fire. Joining us inside the Bachelor Pad this week is founder, CEO of Cray, who built this amazingly innovative app that we're definitely going to talk about. But before we put the cart before the horse, Justin, welcome to the show. Thank you for hanging out with us on New Year's Day. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. New year. Can't wait to see what this year holds. And I appreciate you helping me start off the new year with a fun experience like this.
Not to toot my own horn, but the Bachelor Pad is not a bad place to be. It's pretty fun. It's pretty fun. But I know you have a big story that kind of led to the creation of this app, but let's take it back a little bit. What is your story? Because nobody ever just wakes up one day and they're like, I'm going to start a business until they do. So what led us up to that moment?
Well, I would say what started me on this business was after my divorce. I went out on dates with women and heard some horror stories about their experiences. And what seemed like obvious red flags to me weren't things that they noticed. And so it kind of just started baking in my head. My background is I have a design degree for my undergraduate, and I worked at our family business, which was a psychological test publishing company, for about 10 years. I was co-owner of it for longer than that, but I kind of grew up in that environment. So my brain likes to pick away at problems and figure out a solution. And this just seemed like something that kind of fell into my lap based upon my life experience of dating really bad partners and my life experience of growing up in a test publishing company. So it felt like a great opportunity for me to use my life experiences and help other people.
I mean, that's huge. And that's really taking initiative because not everybody has the awareness to hear something and be like, we need to fix this and then actually follow through. A lot of people are like, oh, that's awful. They hear these stories about first dates, internet dates. And they're like, oh, that's awful. Like, we should probably never do that or somebody should fix it. But to actually take the extra step and develop something that could help ping out these red flags, these pause moments that you should be like, hey, we need to be alert. Next level. Huge kudos to you for that. Now, obviously, men and women, different brains. And what's common to us is not common to them and vice versa. So, and this, especially in this day and age, we hear a lot of the term like red, green, beige flag, or ick, all these other things. They just become kind of jargon at a point, but let's actually talk about that in itself. Do you believe that red flags are actually a thing, or are they just mechanisms to kind of personify our anxieties?
I would say red flags are unhealthy habits or behaviors that show up in relationships when one party doesn't have their stuff together or has a lot of mental health issues that end up spilling on to their partner. So, to give you some examples of what I mean, substance abuse. That's an issue that has to do with one partner. It's not both partners, but that does have an impact on the health of the relationship and the satisfaction of the relationship. If your partner's hiding vodka bottles throughout the house so they can be an alcoholic, that's, doesn't matter how good of a partner you are, that's going to be, a huge issue. So there's red flags like that. There's red flags like, unkind during conflict. These things, we don't normally think about these things when they're in the midst of a relationship because we're so stuck into what that conflict is that we don't really stop and ask questions. We may not have the clarity to kind of think through these things. So the app provides that for people. I knew from my experience, I needed a way to kind of take the clay and mold it so that people could use a tool that was very effective. And it seems like I've created that from what, the feedback I've gotten from people, which is nice.
It really is because a lot of times I feel like people are really just reactive. Like we're all just walking trauma responses. X happened years ago or months ago or weeks ago. And how we show up after that is just the response not actually managing or thinking about like the root cause. And then we just think it's every day, like this is how things should go. But really taking the time and checking in using this hopefully changes that whole not just conversation, but thought process about how we appear to people and how we perceive things.
Yeah, and I feel like I don't want to make blanket statements. I feel like there's an issue that a lot of people struggle with too, which is the clarity of themselves. Am I in a position to be dating? I mean, that's a big one. Am I showing up in an honest way to the person I'm dating? Dating these days has turned into a very, I would say, dangerous thing now with online dating and the risks and rewards of what comes with it. Getting back to your point, you mentioned that men and women have two different types of brains. I kind of developed the app with that in mind. There's the Cray score, which is more geared at women, and then there's the schemer score, which is more for men. Because I feel like men on online have issues such as, is this person trying to get money from me? You know, are they going to try and exploit me or manipulate me to get money or to some other benefit from the guy, because they know that guys are in hot pursuit and will pursue women to nth degree to get what they want. And so there's a lot of people nowadays that have learned that they can exploit that, especially with the, I don't want to say weaker men, but the men who are in more need of attention or, you know, companionship. So I've tried to really sort through all those issues and give as much thought to it and create as many safety barriers, if you will, to protect people from those kind of people.
And that is, it may go unnoticed, but we appreciate that because you're right. Dating now is, I used to say it's a wild place, but it's also a scary place. I never thought that having standards would mean running background checks sometimes, but that's what it feels like because you do. I had a buddy the other day. He was like, I'm really excited. I just matched with this girl on Tinder. Like, we're going to go on a date. We've been talking. The conversation's been good. And then I talked to him maybe 2 days ago. I was like, whatever happened? He was like, what do you mean, no, we're not talking to her? He was like, oh, she was just trying to use me to subscribe to her OnlyFans and like be a premium member, like charging for X, Y, and Z. And didn't actually want to have any conversation that wasn't about the business or like
Yeah,
me
and
paying.
that's in the schemer score. One of the things is this mentality of prove yourself to me, which is how they get you, because they're like, "Oh, you want my attention? Prove yourself to me. Show me why I should give you my attention." And that usually means jumping through hoops or other things that give them financial gain. And, you know, quick to meet is another red flag. If someone is quick to meet and the plans change, you know, from what was originally agreed upon, and there's financial gain or mentionings of gifts or things like that's already a bunch of red flags in a row. And I think men are catching on to the fact that we need to be more concerned about who we're going out on dates with, because this could end really badly.
That's so true. And a lot of people don't necessarily realize that it's not just quick changing plans or like the high intensity, the hyper focus early on in conversations, but it's also that, hey, there's no foundation here. Because a lot of time it's never getting to know. It's always, what are we gonna do? I was like, we have to build the life. I was like, we have to build the connection. It's cool not knowing the person's last name that you just matched with on a dating app. That's fine. That's not what I'm saying. But I was like, hey, do you know my favorite color? It's such a simple thing, but I was like, if we're not even getting or nobody's showing interest in these small details and everybody's just doing these really big, broad questions, that's probably a good sign that they're not actually trying to connect or just trying to gauge what can I get away with this person. I hate the term mark, but is this going to be a mark for me or not? Almost in a sense.
No, absolutely. I think that's the scary thing. And I think like you said, you never know in this day and age, and we have to be a lot more careful and considerate of who we're spending our time with, and even does this person know that any information about me, and does it seem like they care about me or my interests or what I've done in the last week? Have they asked me about it? Do they remember that I went on a trip to New York last week? Because those kinds of things help you realize as well that if this person doesn't care about you or what you're into or what you've been doing with your life, those are also pretty good indications of what kind of person that is.
No, for sure. Like I said, dialogue is something both for men and women that I don't think we really pay enough focus to. And what I mean by that is when somebody is chatting to you and they don't seem to be understanding of, hey, I'm at work right now, and so I can't talk to you 24/7. Message, 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 message. That's not a guy or whoever is making that statement being flaky or non-committal. That's just everyday life. I was like, we all have to work. We all have jobs. Nobody can have 24 access 24/7. That's just not a thing we can do. And then on the other end of that is sparing communication, just like breadcrumbing in the sense, is a really big red flag for me because when you are intentionally doing that, like not setting a timer, but almost, okay, I'll give a little bit right now and then we're going to make them wait. I know they responded already and I'm not doing anything, but we're just going to make them wait. That playing of the game, I was like, why? I was like, if you're really about connection, if you, because this is what the rest of our relationship is going to look like, whether it be a month, 3 years, or the rest of our life, is you're not almost manipulating in a sense communication. I was like, because if that's the case, I don't know if that's a relationship or a situation I would want to be in. I know time is a valuable commodity; it's our most guarded asset, but don't use that against me or weaponize it.
Yeah, it is funny too how there's this there's the two extremes, and there's this area that we feel comfortable in, and acceptable behavior. And I think that's part of the issue too, is learning, as you go through these, what to look out for. What is that range that you're happy with? But also what is the way you want to present yourself in those ways too? Because I think, a lot of people don't give thought to that. Should I be messaging is it healthy even to be messaging someone all day long? Whether or not you have the ability to, is that
Mhm.
something that's, healthy behavior, or are you creating a codependent relationship? So I feel like that's one of the problems with dating too, is we kind of have to screw up a bunch of times to learn lessons. So that's kind of the hope behind the app, is to help limit some of that stuff. But unfortunately, we kind of have to find out some of it the hard way.
Honestly, no matter who you know, because I have a large age range between me and some of my friends. Some of my friends are in their late 60s, some are just finishing college. So we have a bunch in between, but the older people, and we all have this, oh, there's your aunt, your uncle, a brother, a best friend. They try to shield you. They're like, hey, I went through a bunch of fucked up stuff so that you don't have to. And we're like, no, it's not the same. Won't happen to me. And then we have to learn the hard lesson. And then we become the teacher in a sense to like the next person. And then the cycle just keeps repeating. But it really is some things you just have to learn the hard way. And it's nice to have tools like this app to help make that solo transition easier. But sometimes you're just going to learn it the hard way.
Yeah, no, I agree. And in creating the app, I thought back to my younger self as I was kind of creating it. Because once I went to college, I learned all the hard lessons about, if a girl is trying to move in with you quick, or like, things like that. It was just, you don't know this stuff as a young kid. And so that's the hope, is at least that I saved that population from a bunch of those landmines. Because if my body showed the landmines I stepped on, I'd be missing most of my body, and I think it would just be the head, neck up probably.
Just like a floating head. That's so true. Listen, I understand the song Love is a Battlefield because you really do take some hits trying to navigate this romantic relationship dating space post internet, especially.
Yeah, and some of them you can't recover from, man. Like the most recent one, my partner of 8 years gone girled me. I mean, this was someone I was with for 8 years, who one day I woke up and boom, she was an illusion. All the stuff she told me was a lie. She had taken over $10,000 from me. Uh, 3 days before she blew up the marriage, a month before that, she'd transferred her mom $16,000. So, dude, and the worst part about it is none of my family believes me, because she's so good at playing this nice girl role. She's so kind, but doesn't help the homeless or anything like that. Like none of the things match up, but she's been this portraying this role for so long, no one wants to disbelieve it now.
You know what? The long game. Some people are built for it. It's sad, but I also think it's healthy to you can trust people. Like trusting people is a basic human need. We have to trust each other and depend on each other to survive. That's just how life is. But I think it's healthy to leave a little distrust, a little skepticism in every relationship, not just romantically. Just as I believe as much as you can love, sometimes you got to hate some stuff too. Like everything within balance, because the minute you tip too much to one side, you leave yourself open and vulnerable to a gone girl situation or maybe something
Absolutely.
worse.
And what's interesting about you bringing that up? I wholeheartedly believe that You should never trust someone 100% only for the fact of self preservation. Everything should pass through the lens of self preservation. Had I created good boundaries, or excuse me, had I been focused on self preservation, I would have created good boundaries around certain issues, and then I wouldn't have had a lot of the things happen that did. But yeah, I think you can't trust anyone 100%, but that's because you need to make sure that you can exist, because in the last year, I don't know if you know how Caesar was killed, but everyone in the Senate stabbed him in the back once.
Yeah,
That's what my last year was. And so
that's
I
tough.
learned a very hard lesson that from here forward, I need to protect myself at every single step. Doesn't matter if I'm doing kind things for people, I just need to always be focused on, first and foremost, am I leaving myself in a vulnerable position? Second, is the goal being accomplished?
No, for sure. You guys love when I give a Mama Jones saying, but my mom always says, I can never give anybody my last because then I have nothing left for myself. And that's so true in this sense of trust, even if it's actual money, kindness, all of these things, you can't give all of it away because you have to keep some for yourself. Like you were saying, self preservation, but also like peace of mind. They have a saying that you always think that a duck is calm, but you never see what's going beneath the water. And when you give everything away, you start to become frantic because you have nothing left for yourself. And now you have to figure out, now you put yourself into a survival situation. And being in survival mode is stressful and makes us make decisions we normally wouldn't have, and usually not for the better.
No, because you're desperate usually in those situations. 100% agree. I think that, bad relationships teach you a lot. And unfortunately, in some ways, it's things that you don't forget for bad reasons. It's like it for the rest of your life, you just know I'll never do that one thing again because of what it did to me. So hopefully, the app and people listening to this helps them avoid some of that, because relationships, unfortunately, are where people can get hurt the most, because to have a good relationship, you need to open your chest and be vulnerable to someone. But that then means that, you're vulnerable to someone, and, you're completely open, and, you know, what they could do is both good or bad. So make sure you pick the right partner who you can trust with that.
That's easier said than done. And I'm pretty sure at least half of you guys listening could agree with that. But that's also something, especially hearing that from a man, that we don't talk about enough is we experience heartbreak, but sometimes heartbreak can turn into trauma and then it just reshapes who we are. It changes our identity for better or for worse. Sometimes we go through an intense heartbreak like this and it makes us hyper vigilant. Sometimes we go like through heartbreak and then we shut off and we diminish our light. All of these different things can kind of be avoided and hopefully with this app. So I'm going to take a step back and ask, not when did this go from theoretical to actual practical, but what is the actual like day-to-day live version of this app look like? What is it when we download it? What are we seeing? What are we doing?
Sure.
How is this going to be something that becomes every day?
So the app is, just to give people an understanding, the app, you open it and it asks you to do a quick, medium, or full assessment of your relationship. And you answer yes, no, or not sure to certain questions or statements. And at the end, it gives you a report. It gives you a summary of the red flags, what category they're each in, and then why each one matters in terms of the relationship's happiness and health. So the goal is to train people through habitual use of the app what red flags to look out for. Because just by answering these questions, they're now putting all those questions in their brain just through memorization. So now when they date people, they'll actually think of those things as they meet someone and be like, oh, wait, this dude has 2 DUIs and he's still hitting these beers all night at the bar. That's not a good sign. I shouldn't date that guy. Or the guy acted aggressive and smashed some of my stuff during a disagreement. Yeah, that's a huge red flag. So it's the goal is just to teach people, train people, and through using it, it kind of changes their way of looking at dating as an activity.
I like that. Honestly, I can't think of anything said like that around, which is really amazing for you because no competition. And with no competition, that means you actually get time to develop a quality product. Perspective is one of my favorite words because it really is almost the start and end all of every situation. And what you're doing is trying to change everybody's perspective of when they are dating or when they are courting or being wooed, what to look out for, because a lot of times we base our lens off of our previous relationships and not necessarily what we should have learned from those relationships. We're like, I know I'll never do this again, but why won't I do this again? And what does it look like outside of just this one instance? So learning these big signs to be like, oh, I should probably form an association between A and B. That way, when I see it, I know to stay so far away from it.
Well, and that's the tough thing too about dating. If we don't heal what's in us, then we're going to keep seeking out that bad person, or we're going to end up gravitating towards that bad person.
Because it's familiar, yeah.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the great things about the app too, is that for people who have a history of life of trauma, this app is perfect. Because if you grow up in a trauma environment, all the red flags look like normal parts of your past world that you know. So when they show up as a red flag, guy DUI or drinking like crazy blackout drunk, and your dad was an alcoholic, doesn't look like a big deal because that's what you grew up in. So this app calls attention to each of the red flags. So it kind of forces people to recognize that it is a red flag. Because if it was in the app, then it is something worth mentioning. So that's one of the cool things too. I think it helps people hopefully avoid those repeating patterns of picking the wrong partners, because nothing in them has changed and there's been no self-improvement, and they haven't realized why they keep repeating that pattern. So I wanted to mention that too, because I think it's one of the really cool, as someone with CPTSD myself, it's great.
I love anything that can be used. It's not an answer, but a tool to help refocus our perception in a positive light. Like I said, it's just amazing. You don't get this as much maybe in online dating, or maybe you do, but charm as a tool of manipulation. A lot of people don't realize the power of charisma. And sometimes those charismatic people who just seem to never turn it off probably have an agenda of some sort. And so, which gets bypassed because they know how to hide some of these red flags. So,
Yeah, some people who, so like people who need a lot of social interaction, it could be because they need the validation. Now, someone who is always needing validation from external sources rather than building up something inside of themselves where they're proud of themselves and they believe in themselves and they've shown themselves self-love, these people who need that external validation, that pit is never getting filled up. And so, yeah, I would be concerned about someone who never turns it off, because they're chasing a car. They're a dog chasing a car. They can't help themselves. And so that would give me a moment of pause personally, because I have no problem spending time by myself. I like spending time by myself. But that kind of person does not. And that kind of person needs, external sources of validation. And that could present some problems in the wrong kind of person. So I wouldn't blame you for having some concerns about that. And that goes to the fact of just getting to know someone really well and having a history that you know. Like, I knew this person for a year before we started dating, so I got to see what they were like, when they weren't trying to get me to date them. I got to see how does this person operate when I just am around observing?
no, that's such a real thing, and it's underrated. I tell people, I could be attracted to you. I can love you, but do I like you? And I feel as if people don't like each other as much anymore. We're so primed to be evaluated and put value into our relationships that being single, you feel like the hot potato and nobody wants to get caught holding it. So we're always trying to pass it off or just to get into some type of situation. And we forget to set boundaries. We overlook these red flags. And red flag isn't a judgmental thing, it's just context. Because, like you said, it's just a displayed behavior that really tells me about some other processes or behaviors that are part of your identity. That's not bad. It's not my job to change you as a partner. And I don't want to. Hopefully, I make your life better, but I don't want to change you. But if these flags are too integral to your identity and you don't think they're a problem, I'm okay with distancing myself as well.
An interesting thing to think about too is that red flags could show up in this relationship between these people, but if I date someone else, it may not show up in that relationship because the way two people connect and interact is different. And so that's something to keep in mind too about the app. Just because it didn't show up in one relationship, it may show up in another. And that's why I focus a lot on it's the relationship being evaluated, not the person. Even if in some cases people can't change who they are and they are who they are, um, I generally still like to frame it in that way to be hopeful.
No, I mean, and that's like I said, that's real. A lot, a lot. One of the biggest red flags that I sometimes have to say for myself is I don't always accept people for who they are, and that's something that I'm working on. Is because the person that I think you should be or could be is irrelevant if it's not the person that you want to be. And I was like, we have to stop dating for potential. That is that gets us into so much trouble. And by us, I do mean me, myself, and I. I don't want to put that on anybody else, but if you can relate, go ahead and drop a like. We date with this idea that the person will, if there are some issues, that they'll either get over them, like they'll change as the longer we date, or that, oh, you could be so great if. No, I was like, if may never come. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't want to be 8 years into a relationship waiting on an if, or I don't want you to feel like that we're 8 years in and I held you to a standard that you felt like you had to put on the production, and then it's causing all this internal strife for you as well.
Yeah, I feel like people have to accept their partner for who they are. And I don't think we live in that society anymore. We live in an instant gratification society where everyone looks at the dating profiles or you're online and they're like, that person looks good. I want to get with that person. And it's not, oh, she looks interesting. Her hobbies look in alignment with mine. It's not through the good evaluation process. It's literally a superficial level. And nothing, that's worth building gets built on a superficial level. They've shown statistically that relationships that start as a hookup are more likely to fail and have a lower quality of relationship. So things need to change if people want to find happiness. And I wanted to be the agent of change in a way. Like this is the first piece is the safety piece. And then the next piece hopefully will be the compatibility piece. Because really I couldn't fix dating if I didn't make it more safe first. Because that's a huge, who cares about how nice the city is you're going to drive into if you get carjacked on the way into it? You know what I mean?
No, that's so true. A lot of the times I tell people nothing exists in a vacuum. And so, in order to actually make change, you have to put all the pieces together. You have to build a pillar system. And so, like you said, safety is a massive component to going out and meeting somebody, but also safety emotionally as well. Because, say, you've gotten past that and you actually meet in person and you enter into any type of situation, if you don't feel safe with the person, you won't really open up to them. And if you're not opening up to your partner or this person, are they really getting to know you? And then at some point, if they don't know you, I mean, that's how, I feel like almost with your situation is your last partner might have put on a great face for a lot of people, but they might not have opened up to them. That's why they're so stuck on believing that there's no way that she would do this to you or they would do this to you, is because they never got to see that authentic open person to be like, maybe they do have a little bit of a, if you're not careful, I might sting you type of
Yeah.
personality.
Well, what's interesting too that I realized while working on the product is no one knows someone like someone's partner. Like, I know my partner better than her family knows her. Like, I know stuff about her that she's done that no one else knows.
Yeah, they're different people.
Yeah. And so that was a piece of it too. Cause I was like, well, what about getting outside raters to come in and like, join it? And I was like, no, it's only the people who are in the relationship who really understand that person. And it's kind of scary that that's how it works. But unfortunately, that's the nature of it. And that's why it's so important to filter out who you get in a relationship with. Because those little like things in the back of your mind that, pop up and you're like, wait a second, that feels like a little red flag. You're like, nah, it's okay. I'll keep trying this out. And then 8 years later, you end up in a situation where you're like, that red flag definitely meant something. Even though it was this tiny little red flag, it definitely was like a sign of something bigger. So that's why I really dove into it too, because I was like, this could save so many people heartache and pain and trauma. And That's why I put the catfish check in there and the background check too, so that people could really research the person that they're dating and make sure that it's not someone that has a criminal history or is using a fake phone number and is a fraudulent person, like all that kind of stuff. Like if I wanted to fix dating, I had to be, make people as safe as possible, and then let's fix the other parts of it afterwards.
I'm really excited to see the trajectory of this app because it's so rare to find apps or programs that are more based in solutions rather than just creating opportunities. Like I feel like a lot of dating apps, they just put all these faces in front of you and they want to create here's as many connections as you can find and create this huge web. This isn't networking. Like I don't just need to meet people or brainstorming. We're just throwing ideas out and see what sticks. I was like, a relationship is something that is highly valued. It's rare to find one that is worth investing in. When you start with the solution of actually connecting, creating these relationships or connections worth investing, that can only build into something greater.
No, I agree. And if you think about it, all the dating apps, their goal is not aligned with their users. Their goal is to keep you on the platform, get as much money out of you as possible, and rinse and repeat that cycle as long as they can. So they don't really want a solution like this, but that doesn't mean it's not going to work and it's not going to happen and the change isn't coming because it's desperately needed, man. As you keep saying, and as I've said too, it just feels like this is like the perfect storm of events that happened that allowed me to get this out in front of people and try to start helping people. Because it's rare too that a business comes out of a tragedy like this and someone figures out a solution from it and then throws themselves on the operating table for people to look at them as a patient or whatever. So
Yeah.
figures the only way to help people, make myself the guinea pig kind of.
First person accountability is huge. And hopefully more people start hearing stories. Actually, we don't want them to hear more stories, but if they do hear the story, they find some way to take action and help alleviate the situation.
Yeah, I mean, if I help even a couple of people, man, I'll be so happy, so thrilled. Just saving one person from an abusive relationship, that's enough for me.
Quality over quantity is not always the mindset of somebody in business because they're like, no, we have to make money. We have to get as many units out as possible. Like, we have to get name brand recognition. But sometimes I tell people, I don't need to be an A-list celebrity. I don't need to be the biggest name in the world. If I can just reach out and help one, two, three people and never help anybody else, I still think it's worth it because those three people could go on to touch countless people and they touched countless people after that. But it really is just about, hey, I genuinely care and I want to take that first step to healing my
No, I
fellow human.
100% agree. I think that was one thing I took on over the last year was that there was this mentality change in me that there's this problem in front of me. Everyone sees this problem. I'm going to be the one to dive in and fix it. And that was kind of just the mentality I took in different ways. There's some homeless people in downtown Tampa I've been helping out the last year also, and that was kind of a branch off of that too. It was just it's been my life mission over the last year to kind of try and attack these big problems and just through interesting solutions.
No, I mean, and I love that you still keep that philanthropic energy because not a lot of people do. There's a difference between being a good person and a kind person.
Do you know most people don't realize the difference between nice and kind? And that was something I drill into also over the last year because I no one knows most people don't know. Nice is just doing something nice for someone. Kind is when you do something nice for someone, but you suffer as a result. And there's a when you're dating people, notice the difference because kind is real, nice is fake. Like
That's
I could take a sweaty shirt of mine, go give it to a homeless person who has no shirt, and I appear nice because I'm giving him a shirt. But I know that the shirt I gave him was a sweaty, smelly shirt, so it's not a kind thing.
no, that's so true. I tell people this and they always laugh or they think it's a wild statement. I know me pretty well. I'm a good person. I'm not necessarily the nicest person, but I'm a good person. And I think if you're really a good person, you can't be nice. And what I mean by that is being open, being honest, holding people accountable, and like you said, going out of your way to do the kindness, knowing that you may suffer or like not profit. That's the sign of a good person. Good people don't talk about all the stuff they do. They just do it. If it comes up, sure, they'll elaborate. But kind people, they always like to let you know that they are doing a kindness.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I feel like kindness is something that's so lost in the world these days. And it's interesting that it is so lost that I've been doing this for last year. People have seen me parked in the same spot getting out of my car. I've had two or three people come up to me just to recognize what I'm doing. And it's like, holy crap, just me stopping and doing this once a week for a year. It's so uncommon that people are coming up to me and like recognizing me for it. That's crazy. Like this should just be natural part of being human. And you see people without food or clothing or a blanket during cold weather, that it just seems like part of natural human nature for me to go fix that if I can.
It's basic.
Yeah.
It's sad that, common courtesy and human decency isn't that commonplace anymore, but it's the world we live in, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm hoping that this is going to be part of the change that helps fix that. I joke that, working on the app and everything, one of the benefits will be that people like my ex won't be as successful in the future. It's another form of giving back.
Listen, I was like, you're never preying on their downfall, but you're not mad if it happens.
Yeah, and it'll be more like they're not going to be successful at their games more than me making their downfall happen.
Right. Now, this is an amazing app and a great topic, but sometimes it gets heavy, it gets a little scary, it gets being real, being honest, sometimes frightens people. So we're going to take a step back and have a little bit of fun. It's a little mini game that I crafted for today's conversation. I don't want you to think too quick, or not too quick. I don't want you to think too hard about these questions. I just want you to kind of hear it, feel it out, and go. Okay? You get three options. It's either a red flag, like it's a legit warning sign that says, hey, this is going to be an issue. It's something that's a reach. It's uncomfortable, unfamiliar, and you're like, I don't know how I feel about it. Or is it a mirror? It's not really about the person, and maybe we're projecting a little bit. So those are like the three responses you can give.
So you're asking red flags that are either a red flag or something that could be wishy-washy or something that's more like projection.
Hmm.
I think the projection one is always interesting because some people can't help themselves but project their issues onto you because they don't have the mental capacity, the smartness to come up with another explanation of what it could be. So anytime I get accused of something, I always run it through the projection filter. Like, does this hit as something that maybe, is true about them and they're projecting it onto me? Like my ex, I keep throwing her under the bus, but she used to always talk about gaslighting a lot. And then it turns out that she was the gaslighter. And so she keeps accusing me of gaslighting, throughout our relationship. But then once she exited and blew up all this stuff, I was like, that's why she was talking about gaslighting, because she was gaslighting me for 8 years straight. Yeah, I would say projection's huge. Keep an eye out for that one.
Now, we kind of talked about this, but like intense chemistry, future talk within the first like week or two of
Yeah, the
dating.
love bombing. Yeah, and future planning. That's huge too. Those are major red flags. I feel like that, or, even when you listen to them, I know I'm going to be breaking this one, but when you listen to them talk about their last relationships and they blame their ex a lot, that's another bad one. I know I've done that a lot during this podcast, but I would say that's a big one too, because there's a lack of accountability, I feel like, these days, pervasive through most of society, but especially in dating and relationships. As soon as it gets bad, someone might just jump out and abandon the relationship rather than there being accountability over their behavior.
That's why I know it couldn't work because there are so many reasons it wouldn't work. But I was like relationship raters, like always like rate your ex, like Yelp reviews. Sometimes they're a little biased.
Well, that's
Sometimes,
what T was. T
yeah,
was basically that, and I mean, they got shut down for obvious reasons. I
yeah.
mean,
Once again, it goes back to what we were talking about, that lack of accountability, because it this is always a red flag or a point of contention for me. I don't mind you talking about the lessons you learned from your ex, but it's when it's just slander is such a hard word, but when it's just blaming and blaming. I was like, well,
crap talking.
two people were in, yes. I was like, two people were in this relationship. So what part did we play, or where did you fit into this at some point? Because once again, I was like, there are times when no, you learn a valuable lesson. And sure, I can admit sometimes in my relationship, I'm the villain and I probably messed things up or I drove somebody. to do X, Y, and Z. But I can admit that. So people who can't do that, I was like, oh, no, I did nothing. I love them and they did this to me. They did that to me. I was like,
They broke my heart.
yeah. I was like, I don't know. Now I'm a little skeptical.
Yeah, I mean, that's the challenge too, as you're dating new people. There's so many things that you have to look out for in their words, their actions, their behavior, seeing exes' items at their house, or, whatever. There's so many things to keep your eye out for. It's almost exhausting, to try and be on top of it. And like, you can't catch everything, but being hyper vigilant is too much for anyone. Like that, it's a second job.
I've been saying this the past 2 years. Dating now is not something we do for fun. I don't know how you casually date because it seems like it's a full-time job.
It is, and it's kind of like when you're at that middle school dance and the girls and the boys are on opposite sides, and someone might walk over and they might intermingle, and there's this flowingness to it, and it's like you can get caught in a trap or you could get left by yourself. Who knows what's going to happen in that mix up? Because you could be courting two people at the same time, or she could, and you may lose out, even though were giving it your best effort, and the chemistry seemed good and things seemed promising. That guy was an 86 and you were an 84. He won. It still causes issues afterwards because you feel like you gave a part of yourself to it. It's definitely a dangerous process these days, and I feel sorry for anyone that's just getting into dating right now in this day and age.
I'm so worried for even the bachelorettes and bachelorettes who've been in the dating game for a while. I'm still worried about them because we knew what it was like before. And so to see what it's like now, that's the biggest thing. I was talking about my friend group earlier is I have a lot of friends who are 23, 24, 25. You're like, oh, you're only like 5 or 6 years older than them. I guess a lot happened in that 5 or 6 years because I'll talk about how we used to actually take people on dates or the mall used to be an acceptable date and all this stuff. And then the looks and the trash talk that I get back. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
The perception of what romance is, what dating is, what a healthy relationship is so whacked right now that I was like,
I feel like influencers ruin that, to be
mm,
honest,
okay.
because you have the female influencers who are like, he's got to do this, he's got to do that, he's got to prove himself to me, blah, blah, blah. You got to do, and if he's not doing these, then I'm done. And it's like, well, hold on a second. You haven't even gotten to know the guy. So how do you know if he was even a good fit for you? This guy could have been like the best emotional fit for you, but because he didn't like buy you a pink flower instead of a red flower, you're upset now and you're going to cast him aside. I mean, we got to get back to getting to know people. I'm an 80s baby. I was born
Okay.
in 1980. And so I grew up before all the MySpace social media. It was still there, but people still got to know each other. Like back when I was in college, you went over to your neighbor and you just hung out. It was just like the intermingling. Nowadays they don't do that. So they don't have the social skills, so they don't know how to approach these situations, and it creates a lot of problems. Like I said, I feel bad for anyone growing up in this environment now because it's like you're on these internet islands of the boys play video games and the girls do social media maybe, and they don't really talk to each other much unless they want to date. And then it's like they're making up for all that, lost time or lost skills of not actually dating. I don't know. It's challenging, man.
Listen, I feel it. I feel that. I'm not going to ask you about your craziest or worst date story because I feel like you've already given us a good story today. But what I do want to ask you is personally for you, how did you heal after going through an ordeal like that? That's another thing I don't feel like we equip a lot of people with today is how to move on properly. A lot of people let the past, the heartbreak define them. And you're right, they don't heal. So they get familiar and attracted to these patterns and they just stay in the same loop. So how did you personally kind of like,
Well, it's a long question. So a year ago, after she blew up the marriage, I made the decision to check myself into a trauma treatment center for 60 days. And I did a lot of self work there. It was group therapy, talk therapy, individual therapy, CBT, which is cognitive behavior therapy, DBT, which is dialectical behavior therapy. And then on top of it, I did ketamine treatments. It was a lot to get over. And even still, a year plus later, I take meds to sleep. So the damage it's done to my body is quantifiable and unquantifiable at the same time, which is the challenge. I mean, once you go through real trauma, you can't heal from some of it. Like there is nothing to do once you have been so deeply affected. Medication helps treat the symptoms, but there's no healing from it. And that's why I felt like I needed to do something about it. When I went back, when I was in treatment during those 60 days, I like really leaned into the app and working on it because it worked as a tool for me to understand the relationship too and where the failures were. Was I the problem? What problems did I contribute to it? And then analyzing her and her behavior and kind of creating the outline for the app is kind of how part of the healing process for me too, because I needed to understand what happened. So it's been a long road, lots of therapy, lots of self work, lots of teaching myself self love, which I think is a very lost skill for men. We never provide ourselves self love. And I feel like that is a hugely lost art. And what I learned is if I treat myself well and I give myself self love, any woman that shows up that does not give me the level of self love I give myself, she looks like like someone I shouldn't even waste any time on. So I think there's a lot of different things like that that people can do that you train yourself to love yourself. You train yourself to be focused on the right way of thinking, the right way of behaving in certain situations. And eventually things start to iron themselves out.
Listen, as somebody who wears their heart on their sleeve, dating with armor on was something I had to take some time to get used to, but you're right. And some people get carried away with it. Self love is huge, and men, take the time to reconnect with yourself and appreciate who you are. Because if you can't appreciate you, how is somebody else supposed to? And the standard that you set for yourself is what you're going to attract. So I get that. No, I'm not talking about that whole high value stuff. I was like, no, the standard should just be, how do they treat me? How do they make me feel? That's the biggest thing I care about now. Is I love to make myself feel good, physically, emotionally, mentally. Is the person I'm talking to, do they make me feel good? And I don't mean, do they stroke my ego? Do they gas me up? No, do they actually make me feel good?
And do they see you?
Hmm.
Like that's another one that I feel like is lost these days. Do they see you for who you are, like at the core, in your marrow? Do they see you? Because there's a lot of lip service that gets played these days, and you have to make sure that the partner you're with is someone who genuinely sees you, cares about you, understands you. Like, because if you're married to that person and you're on the operating table and they need their advice on do they pull the plug or not, and you're with someone who doesn't like you, guess what's happening? Like, yeah, they're getting your inheritance, buddy.
And that's also, I mean, other side of that coin is that's really what it means for the person to see you. Because so often, as working in healthcare for almost a decade, when we ask that question, it's so crazy to me how often we get selfish answers. And they're like, they know this isn't what you want, but it's what they want. And since they have the power, they to do that. And I was like, no, I was like, that's not what we ask you. We ask you because you're supposed to know what they want, not what
Yeah.
makes you happy or like comfortable. So,
I always say you can tell a lot about someone by how they act when they get in power.
well, yeah,
Because,
for sure.
yeah, because if someone isn't a good person, you get them in power, oh, everyone's paying for the things they did to them. Whereas a good person, it's like, okay, I'm not changing anything about myself. This is okay. So now I have power. It's just me.
Right. I was like, I never want to impose will, and like that's what I'm saying. People once they get power, they start imposing. I'm like, I was like, this is just who you were the whole time. You just didn't have the platform to do it.
They didn't feel like they could, like they were in a safe space where they could do it. Not
Yeah.
now that they have the safe space to do their power, you get to see the real side of them. Yeah, it's unfortunate. I think that's one of the downsides about dating too. Is you meet. My buddy had a good way of saying this. You meet their representative for the
Hmm.
first year until they know that, like, gotcha, bitch. Like until that point, you don't really know who you're with.
Yeah.
That's the scary thing too. So it's unfortunate, but there's a tool like this now to hopefully help people. And just even me talking about it, hopefully this will open people's minds to being a little bit more discerning when they meet the person they're dating or that person's trying to win them over. Because I mean, if someone's love bombing you, it's pretty hard to calibrate your brain about, is normal? Is this appropriate? Is this guy doing this for the right reasons, or this girl?
Mhm.
You never know.
This is just a question I want to pose to everybody listening, watching, and even to you, Justin. If you really think back to the most traumatic relationship you've ever had, would you have left it sooner if you had a bit more context, if you had a tool like this app?
Yes, I would. Thinking back to my most horrible relationship, she was physically and emotionally abusive. She needed a place to move into within the week or two of starting dating. And it was just like every checkbox you could think of red flags was checked. So if I had the app and I had used the app, I 100% believe it would have saved me.
Amazing. Well, for anybody listening right now, where can we get this app? Is it on iOS? Is it on Android? Is it just a website? Like, where can we start using?
Yeah, the web address is cray.app, Cray period app. It's also in both app stores under Cray dash dating safety. And it's been available for about 3 months now.
3 months, kicking off into a new year. I can feel the boom that it's about to have as we get back into. Listen, we're coming out of cuffing season here soon, so people are going to be back on that market. So hopefully, everybody, if you are going on a trip, if you are getting out of a tough relationship, or you're finally not done working on ourselves because we never do that, but you're finally at a point in your journey that you're ready to hit the dating market again. Hopefully, you guys are downloading Cray or checking it out on your desktop. Just remember, dating doesn't have to be reckless, but it also doesn't need to be numb. And we do a lot of that with swiping. So take the time, check out some of these scenarios, reshape your perspective, and hopefully by the end of 2026, you have found your forever partner who's there for you and not to scheme or manipulate.
Absolutely. And just keep in mind, if you're weeding out every bad apple or the worst of the apples, then that means that your dating satisfaction will be much higher in the relationship you do end up in. And that's the goal too. So I encourage people to check it out, reach out, give it a review, or download the app, tell your friends. It's something that I'm going to be promoting to colleges and college students, but it's really for anyone that is of dating age that just wants to improve and make their dating more effective and ending up with someone who's good for you.
I love that you use that effective dating. I'm not just doing it to do it. Like, being bored is never the answer to do anything, but actually wanting to connect and build something, pretty good excuse. Well, guys, thank you so much for making it to the end of another episode of the Not So Bad Bachelor Pad. 2 weeks into 2026, it's going pretty good. Let me know how your New Year's was, guys. Until then, I will see all you amazing bachelors, bachelorettes, and partner people next week for an all new episode. Peace.